Hello and welcome to a webinar on .conf23 highlights, everything you want to know about what's new or due in Splunk. With myself, Ben Marrable, I'm a senior Splunk security architect at Somerford, and I've been digging through all of the sort of announcements at .conf to hopefully put this little summary together for you. Hopefully you'll find it useful. Just a couple of things. I will be talking about some of their future release kind of announcements, so don't go buying any shares in Splunk and all that. So there are really three key major announcements, I would say, from .conf. They were all done in the keynote on the first day, and essentially the first one I would say is the Microsoft partnership. So Splunk has been, and Splunk Cloud has been available on AWS and GCP for a while now, certainly AWS for a long time, but naturally the ability to have it on Microsoft Azure, because I know customers that always are on Azure, that is now going to become possible, right? So that's a really key kind of sort of partnership that's really good. Another thing that I've seen out of this is code development. So I expect much tighter integrations between Splunk and Microsoft's tooling. So things like Office 365, Azure, all the sort of things that you can get from Microsoft, and basically better applications, better add-ons, all that sort of thing, which would be great. Second thing I would say is the Splunk Edge Hub. If you haven't heard about this, I'm going to go into a bit more detail later in this webinar on it, but it's very cool. Splunk getting in the kind of realms of hardware for operational technology. So very useful if you work in sort of factory industry, but also just monitoring sort of areas or contained areas or secure areas that you want to kind of have sort of an edge out there to kind of understand what's going on. But as I say, I'll go into more detail of it. And then the third thing that was really key about what they were going on about at .conf was AI. It's everywhere, obviously, but Splunk are also joining into that. Now, Splunk have been doing AI and machine learning for quite a while now with the machine learning toolkit, but what they're actually doing now is kind of advancing that to the next level. So one of the cool things that they're doing is a Splunk AI assistant, so generative AI. Again, I'll go into a bit more detail on that a little bit later, but that's quite a nice little feature that's going to add value, I would suggest, to lots of users that are generally learning Splunk or going out to try and do new things in Splunk. It could be very, very useful. Machine learning powered security analytics, so not just correlation searches now, but machine learning content that's going to come into enterprise security and expand it. So it's going to become an app that kind of can add on to enterprise security to get security analytics using machine learning, which is really exciting. And the Splunk app for anomaly detection, which has been out for a few months now, but it's a way of kind of giving you a wizard to kind of look for anomalies, which is quite nice. So those are the kind of the three of the key AI ML kind of pieces that I would say has been talked about. There's a new version of the machine learning toolkit and the deep learning toolkit, but generally those are the kind of big things that I would say have come from .conf. So I'm just going to go into a bit more detail on all the different areas. So Splunk Advanced Threat Detection, Investigation and Response is kind of a new kind of branding concept for Splunk Security Suite, really is probably the best way to put it. So we're going to talk about ES, so new features to ES. So most of these are actually all coming soon. So there's not been a new feature, a new ES release that recently, but they have things in the pipeline that they expect to be releasing in the next version of enterprise security, and they'll obviously be looking at new things further than that. So one of the first things I've already talked about is that new add-on for behavior-based analytics and detection capabilities for Splunk ES using ML. So really, really useful, really exciting to see what they can possibly do with this. You start to put AI into our detections really, really simply and easily. So excited to see what happens there. These are all, again, coming soon. So we'll have the ability to have multiple drill down searches for notables. So this is a feature that's a lot of customers have been requesting, the ability to, for a notable event, to actually have different drill downs available to you to kind of look further into it and start the investigation. So really quite exciting. And also with the risk-based alerting, we'll see more of that in there as well. Incident review page timeline is returning, so you can see the sort of timeline of your notables occurring. So this used to be in the old versions from version 6 prior, 6.0 prior, but they took it out with the new version of incident review, and they're bringing it back, which has been a customer request. And then also there'll be an auto refresh for incident review. So when you're sitting there looking at an incident review, you don't have to refresh it each time. That is configurable, I've been told. So you should be able to do that on a 5-minute, 10-minute interval or 30-second interval, whichever you feel is most appropriate for your SOC. So those are kind of the key things from ES. So nothing hugely groundbreaking apart from maybe the security analytics, but obviously new features coming, of course. If we switch now to SOAR, we're going to see 6.1's just been released. It's actually got new pre-built playbook packs. So 2 key ones really: phishing with identifier reputation analysis, and also threat hunting. So there's a new playbook packs for doing these sort of types of investigations and response plans. So these are all pre-built and ready to go. So it's coming out of 6.1. There's now also the ability to do logic loops, which is in a playbook where you'd have multiple parallel kind of pipelines of actions occurring. You can wait for one of those to end before you then continue with the second one, or 2 or 3 or whatever. So you kind of loop back into yourself in terms of how that play actually occurs, which is exciting. We've got playbook triggers, so when actual events happen in Splunk SOAR, we can trigger a playbook, so such as a container being closed, that sort of thing. We can actually configure a playbook to run on that. It's triggering on an event in Splunk SOAR, and also the ability to copy and paste images into notes. So there's the SOAR new features. One final one, which is the ability to take ownership of the Palo Alto connector, or Splunk taking ownership of the Palo Alto connector, I should say. So what that really means is the Palo Alto connector is going to become Splunk supported, and it's going to have added actions to be able to interact with Palo Alto technologies, really. So that's cool. Kind of a new thing that's Splunk have just acquired, or acquired the end of last year, really, is a company called TwinWave. And TwinWave is the next generation threat analysis platform. Okay, so Splunk have rebranded it as Splunk Attack Analyzer. And what it actually does essentially is you can take potential threats and automate analysis of delivery vectors. So things like URLs, IPs, sorry, not IPs, URLs, files, that sort of thing, that you want to actually just run in a sandbox environment effectively, and can scan these things, so QR codes, links, downloaded files, even entering passwords into that, take screenshots and capture what's actually going to happen if that is executed. That malicious content is executed in its own sandbox environment, so you can kind of understand what depth, when you do your investigation, is actually occurring. So if you've got a potential phishing email, you can send that link into the attack analyzer. It will go out, grab the details, maybe even put in some credentials, fake credentials or whatever, and see what actually occurs when that happens, and bring that back to you. Which is exciting and nice extra technology that can come from Splunk, very integrated with mission control, which I'll come to a bit in a second. Splunk Mission Control. So Splunk Mission Control, this is the kind of top level piece of the TDIR solution. One of the things, I mean, we've spoken about Mission Control previously. It's all about making it a singleized interface, but it's actually been rebuilt this year. Earlier in this year, it's now been rebuilt. It's being rebuilt to work on Splunk Cloud ES as opposed to Splunk Security Cloud, and it also will be coming to on-prem, which is great news when that happens. It does include access to the threat intelligence management. However, obviously that only happens for ES Cloud customers, and at the moment only for ES Cloud customers in the US, so probably less of the people that are listening to this webinar, but it will be coming soon to a wider space of cloud customers, and it will also be coming, as I say, for on-prem very soon as well. So when you've got this up and running, you can integrate it to Splunk Threat Intelligence Management, and it will also integrate with other technologies, and of course into enterprise security. And this is the ability to then go through or execute things in threat as Splunk Attack Analyzer and respond to everything inside this window, which runs as an application on top of Splunk Enterprise and Splunk Cloud. So that's great. Positive news, really, moving forward, especially for our on-prem environments and customers. So yeah, looking forward to that. Switching gear now to the observability suite. So we've talked about security side. Now let's talk about observability. So I'm sure lots of you are keen to know what's new here. So first off, Splunk Observability Cloud. One of the key things, unified identity between Splunk Cloud and Splunk Observability Cloud. So this really means single sign-on. So previously, it used to be a case of having to log into Splunk Observability Cloud and log into Splunk Cloud. Now, that might not seem so much of an issue, but what it did mean is that there wasn't really a link between the access controls in Splunk when you were querying Splunk. It was all done from service accounts. Now it's tied to your account as you run analysis in Splunk to get the log data from Splunk Observability Cloud, respecting your access controls. So that's really exciting. That's really good. Really positive news there. The other thing that's coming down here is OpenTelemetry, right? Splunk's been the largest contributor to this OpenTelemetry project and was involved in founding it, essentially. Probably one of the most exciting parts of this really is that it is now going to be part of an add-on to the Universal Forwarder. So that allows OpenTelemetry to be configured from the deployment server. So that tight integration now to all of your universal forwarders that are out there, as well as obviously OpenTelemetry working in Kubernetes and all that side of things. But now adding it to the universal forwarder is going to really speed that process up to be able to collect traces and metrics and all sorts of different data out of all of your Unix and Windows machines, which is brilliant, really. Also, they've announced zero configuration for OpenTelemetry Collector. So this is if you've got the Java side of things going on correctly and you've got the right libraries, you can actually do it without any configuration. It will just, the Java will just pick up all your Java apps and the traces, turn those traces on, and send them into Splunk application APM, which is a nice added feature, I would say. And then finally, on the observability cloud is the RUM side of things, and RUM, real user monitoring, session replay. So the actual ability to play back and reconstruct end users' experiences, faster investigation response, but mostly be able to see what they're doing. So if they're moving their mouse around on the screen in terms of their web page, what they're actually doing, how they're interacting with your web front end, how that is playing out, so you can see when they get issues what's going on, right? These are the kind of key things when, you know, they're not checking out, why they're not checking out, they're having issues, all sorts of different things like that. You can kind of see and you can visualize it now. So it's really useful for the analyst to kind of get into and fix, which is good stuff. Splunk ITSI, new features here. So outlier exclusion for adaptive thresholding. So previously we have had adaptive thresholding for our service KPIs. Now we can actually exclude certain timelines or certain events because we are interested in when, you know, if there's a change, a known change happening, we can kind of make sure that that is not involved in our adaptive threshold levels. We don't want to be dealing with that, and we want to be alerted when normal behavior is occurring. So that's new. Also coming, machine learning assistive adaptive thresholding, so actually getting ML involved in doing those adaptive thresholding, which is coming soon as part of the AI side of things and the ML side of things. And then also what you can see on screen there is the service sandbox. So this is a web front end or a visual GUI, if you like, to build services from the ground up, right? So when we do a service decomposition workshop and we start working about from the bottom to the working through your services, you know, the disks that are involved in the website, in the database and all that sort of things, as it goes all the way up to actually your web portal or whatever, building that together with this visual kind of concept of dragging these kind of different areas of different services to build them together. So this is going to be really good at actually getting your services built for ITSI much quicker, which is great. And then the third area, the Splunk platform, which is probably where the most exciting side of things is coming, I would say. Not so much on this one, but Splunk Cloud, there's a few things. Cross-region Splunk disaster recovery. So if you are a Splunk Cloud customer, you can now have disaster recovery to switch to regions in AWS or GCP and Azure when it comes, which is very important to some of the largest customers. Absolutely. The couple of new features in the cloud monitoring console, a couple of new updates, really, health monitoring dashboard and 5-minute intervals of SVC usage. So now we're getting tighter monitoring of what's going on with the SVCs, which is a positive. And also just to make you aware, like earlier this year, not that it matters to too many of the people that are working in Europe and so forth, this kind of webinar will go out to, but FedRAMP High for Splunk Cloud is in process now. So they're FedRAMP Medium certified, but now they're in process to get FedRAMP High, which is really good for US government customers and anybody that might be working in the in those sort of industries as well. But it does kind of highlight the depth that Splunk Cloud are going to make themselves compliant with lots of processes, so that you can kind of be assured that security is going well, and they're putting in processes and so forth in place for that. Splunk Edge Processor. So with this disparate world of computing now, essentially, Splunk have come up with the concept of the Splunk Edge Processor. I think it might have been announced last year at .conf, but it's come into a bit more detail. So it works at the edge. So for those organizations that have lots of different areas where they generate a lot of data, this is a way of getting pipelines, filtering that pipelines of data, masking it and routing it where you need to do it. So you can route it to Splunk, you can route it to multiple Splunks, you can route it to other technologies, you can route it to a cloud storage, whatever you need to do, but you can basically filter it in the area that it exists and send it on. So you can kind of think of this as the kind of next level of the heavy forwarder kind of concepts. At least that's my view. And so we can filter and mask, because what you would normally put heavy forwarder in line for, but now we can do it all in the streaming kind of concepts, and we've got visualizations and we've got SPL2 to be able to do this sort of thing, which is really key. This uses SPL2. So Splunk announced SPL2 maybe 2 years ago now, a new version of the SPL language, which has a lot more kind of concepts in it. It's no actual cost in addition to a Splunk license, right? So similar if you're running heavy forwarders, there's no additional cost for this side of things, which is good. Now, Splunk Edge Processor, not to be confused with Splunk Edge Hub, which is one of the new things that have been brought out, which is hardware. Splunk getting in the world of hardware now, and building this kind of little device here that actually has a number of different sensors in it. So light, noise, temperature, humidity, vibration levels, CO2 levels, many others. It also can plug them into other manufacturer sensors. So you've got this little box that has a number of different sensors in it, and you can imagine a lot of different use cases for this, really. So in terms of light, you could stick it in a server room, and if someone walked into that room, the light would change, and therefore you'd get an anomaly effectively occurring in that environment. Maybe the temperature of devices, systems, servers, humidity in the server room, or of course for operational technology systems in factories, warehouses, manufacturing plants, all sorts of different areas where you want to be monitoring vibration levels, everything really, because a tiny little bit of vibration can make a massive difference to the end product that's being generated. So this is really exciting, right? So this is Splunk entering new realms. But what's key about it is all of this gets sent back to Splunk, right? So it comes into Splunk. Splunk then has pre-built models, ML again, to detect outliers in those conditions of any of those sensors. So if anything looks out of the ordinary, so we're going to probably plug it in, and we're going to see that usually the light levels at 60 or the temperatures at 30 degrees or whatever it is, and suddenly it spikes. It's quite straightforward to understand how that kind of thing can occur. But if you've got very regular active behavior that goes in, you're walking into the office, and the office is open from 9 till 5, and people turn the lights on and then they go in the office, or on a dark day or on a light day, there's all sorts of these kind of things. That's where you really need machine learning to get involved, to kind of understand what the behavior is. And of course, you can correlate that information with calendars or something else. It supports Wi-Fi, Ethernet, cellular networks, so getting it from some of the most remote areas, and so forth can be really key as well, using cellular networks or anything else to send that data back. And so what you can then do is visualize it a bit like this, right? So this is a manufacturing process. You've got your availability, you've got performance, you've got your quality levels, you've got your body assembly, you've got your trim and glass. This is obviously a car manufacturing area, and you've got color coding going on about where things are sitting, you know, execution rates a bit high or whatever it is that you want to be looking at. Obviously this is using Dashboard Studio to give a nice visual effect of the whole thing, but you can see how valuable this kind of data can be, having these kind of edge hubs in places, really, to kind of understand vibration levels, pressure levels, temperature levels, all sorts of different things. So that's really exciting, really new, exciting new thing that's coming from Splunk. And then finally, I did mention it earlier, is the Splunk AI assistant, and this is generative AI. So, you know, like ChatGPT and others are available, and what we can really do now is actually build queries from free-form text. So if you want to ask Splunk to tell me how many people logged in today, or if you want to ask Splunk, you know, you can use natural language. Tell me if Ben's ever connected to this system, or the last time he connected to this system. Tell me how many people have gone to job sites or something like that recently. You know, you could just give it a free-form text, and what it will do is build the query for you, which is really exciting. Or, which I think is really useful, is actually explaining SPL queries in depth. So let's see what it looks like. Essentially, you can put in your T-stats information. You can put in a nice complex query. Maybe you got that from some sort of Security Essentials or some other technology in Splunk already, and you kind of want to break it down and understand it. We put it in, it will respond with, okay, this is a T-stats command. This is to do statistics. Right, this is this bit, that bit, and the other bit. So it breaks it all down for you line by line to kind of understand and break and kind of hopefully help you kind of understand what the search actually means. So this kind of like ability here to both build queries and to dissect queries can be really powerful at leveling up a lot of people that are kind of training or learning about Splunk, want to start doing things, or of course C-suite users that really just want to be able to kind of get an answer about what's going on, just want to ask it standard questions, don't need to learn SPL, can just ask it for answers. Basically just ask it a question, it will give you the answer. So this is really exciting, obviously, and a very cool addition to Splunk. So that was really my roundup. Thank you very much for joining me. I've just got a couple of other things to say. You know, let's come and explore Splunk workshops in Q3. We've got discovery workshops going on for lots of different Splunk technologies. There's a link there called summerfordassociates.com, Splunk workshops. If you come to the enterprise security one, you might see me doing it. So that's one thing. And then another thing, basically, we've got a Splunk bite-sized security webinar series coming. This webinar attendance actually includes complimentary Krispy Kreme selection. So do join me and Stu for that one. Starting, well, it's already been, the first one has already been, but there's a couple more coming in August and then one in September. And this is where we're going to break down enterprise security under the hood and take a much closer look in a kind of a bite-sized kind of series, which should be quite good. And then finally, thank you for your time. Hopefully you found this useful, and if there is anything you want to explore further or you like the look of, then do reach out, get in touch with your account manager or info@summerfordassociates.com, and we'll be able to help you along the way in taking your Splunk to the next level.